Welcome to Bankole's Nation. I'm your host, Bankole Thompson. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of our podcast. Our guest coming up is Congressman Jackson from the city of Chicago, and of course, one of the sons of the late Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson Sr., civil rights giant and global statesman who recently passed away. Congressman Jackson is going to reflect on his father's legacy, the eulogy he gave, Rise, Jesse, Rise. We're also talking about the state of DEI in Congress, as well as the midterm election, and of course the 2028 presidential election. It's all coming up on our episode with Congressman Jackson here on Bankole's Nation. Stay with us. I'm your host, Bankole Thompson, live from Detroit. Pleasure to welcome Chicago Congressman Jackson, and of course he's also one of the sons of the late Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, civil rights giant, who was recently funeralized in Chicago. I had the honor of attending that private service. There was also a memorial where 3 presidents attended to pay homage to the Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, as well as the president of South Africa, the Congo, and you name it. Congressman, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Bankole. I appreciate you. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your friendship with my father. Thank you for coming and being our special guest.
Well, thank you so much. Congressman, I want to begin with your eulogy that you gave at the funeral itself. I think it touched a lot of people because you came out like a defense attorney for your father. It's almost as if it's one of those, I don't know if it was a Johnny Cochran theological moment for you, but it was almost as if you were defending your father's integrity and the work that your father has done. And I've listened to all of the reflections that were given over the 2-day period for the public memorial as well as the funeral service. But I don't think there's been any speech that's really eclipsed what you delivered. And you ended it up by talking about Rise, Jesse, Rise. I want you to reflect a bit on that eulogy. Why did you feel the need to go down that route?
Well, it was about 3 years ago. My father told me he wanted me to do his eulogy, and I begged him not to ask me that. I mean, it's a heavy burden that I know him as dad, and I never looked at him as an icon and all this other stuff. I'm sensitive to that, but I know his very human side, his very emotional side. And so I started off in speech therapy. We used to call it extra help if you were a stutterer. Now they've got all these other terms that they have for it. So I didn't know if I would choke up if I start studying. I tend to cry a little more than most people. And so anyway, he told me in 3 years, he says, you'll be ready. That was 3 years ago. And this was my personal reflections that I wanted to show the times that he was born in, the obstacles that he had to overcome, how he made things better, and, asking for the good Lord to open his arms and welcome him, please. My father always told me he was a long distance runner. At the age of 19, he was arrested trying to go and use a public library in Greenville, South Carolina. Something like that is unimaginable. And people would say, oh, that wasn't that bad. But we're all shaped by our youth. And so he had to overcome a system in the country when he was born in 1941 where lynchings were still legal. There'd never been any anti-lynching laws. Lynchings had happened in South Carolina where education was denied. He couldn't go to the school of his choice because he was Black. There were Black graveyards, white graveyards, Black schools, white schools. He had to confront that. That was the level of an inferiority complex that the system, and out of that, his soul burst out to say, I am somebody, and to feel whole, to look at America as having the capacity to get better and not be a bitter person. I think you had to first start with the soil that he comes out of, then to say the challenges he confronted, and ultimately his life spring. He was eternally optimistic. Reverend Samuel DeWitt Proctor, had described my father to me as courageous, on the outside and compassionate on the inside. And those
Yeah.
words just kind of always stuck with me.
Yeah, remarkable. And of course, to our listeners and viewers, Congressman Jonathan Jackson's speech, I will recommend it for anybody to watch it. It's a master class on oratory, a master class on the use of language, a master class on, I think, authentic speech. And that's the courage. I want to talk about your father's courage here, because him running for president in 84 and 88, just a decade or a decade plus after the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that took a lot of courage for any Black person to have the audacity to say they were searching or running for the highest office in the land. Talk about the significance of that, though.
Well, after the 64 Civil Rights Act, where the country is going to formally say that discrimination is illegal, it wasn't that long ago. That's 20 years after the 64 Voting Rights Civil Rights Act is when he ran in 84. And part of that was saying our time had come, that we did not need to be in these tents and these booths that are set up on parking lots at the Democratic Convention, trying to get a note to a speech writer, trying to get a note back in front of the candidate, saying, won't you please say something about South Africa? Won't you please say something about Gaza? Won't you please say something about the Congo? Please, please. Well, sometimes you have to stand up and assert yourself. And so that's what he did. Was Harold Washington's victory here in Chicago that was propelled by $250,000 raised, 50,000 people put on the voter rolls. Took that same energy and he started a Southern crusade, went all throughout the South of Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, Tennessee, South and North Carolina, to register our people. Many places that the Democratic Party had stopped going. They had written off, saying that we can't go to these places. So he had the audacity, the gall to go into Iowa and go across the cultural lines and introduce himself and talk about the plight of the farmer. I remember one line he says, when the lights are out, we all look amazingly similar. And so when the economic lights are going out and we're in the dark, the farmer and the rural community and the urban consumer, the producer and the consumer have so much together. He was trying to put forth an economic plan to keep farmers on their land, to stop what has grown into this huge agribusiness. He was trying to show there's economic and political coalition. So there may be people that were stigmatized with LGBT and AIDS was a big issue then. He embraced those that had AIDS and said they need research. It's an issue of blood. They're not to be pushed out. The farmers, they need some economic reform. The urban worker. So he was pulling all these distinctive pieces together and said, together we're a coalition. We're a rainbow coalition. And together we have the same interest and we should come together. And so that created the coalition politics that went on to win for President Clinton, for President Obama, which is a core central piece of the Democratic Party now. My father oftentimes said he was a he was a trailblazer, not a pathfinder. He had to go through the thickets and gut through the weeds and get the scratches and the cuts so that other people could follow behind him. So oftentimes it's not a very glorious, glamorous position. It's almost like the bunt hitter in baseball, you know?
Right.
You got to intentionally get an out to force yourself to first so that others can advance, so that the team can advance. And in many ways, that was his role, to make sure that the team advanced. That's at the heart of
right. And President Clinton and President Obama inherently directly benefited from the groundbreaking campaigns of your father. They came to the celebrations of life to talk about that. How important was it for you, to watch these two presidents come and not only affirm the truth, but also to talk about how your father was a linchpin to their own presidencies?
Yeah, it was truly an honor to have both President Clinton, President Obama, and President
Biden,
Biden to
of
be
course.
there. And my father ran against Biden when they were in Iowa. Biden had dropped out. So over these 40 years, you become friends, allies, colleagues. You've seen people in, their life circumstances. With President Clinton, you knew him before he was governor, while he was governor, when he lost governor and got back in, before he started to run. Saw President Barack Obama here in Chicago after he finished law school. First Lady Michelle Obama was a frequent guest at our table when she was in high school. Her and my sister were best friends and National Merit Scholars. So we've seen them evolve, but an honor truly for them to grace my father. And it just simply says that they recognize the work he had done. They paid their own special tributes. And what an honor, I would say, about that. And three presidents, and from Colombia, from South Africa, from the Congo, very significant. And more people wanted to come, but because of visa restrictions and other things, it was very difficult.
Yeah, yeah. I want to move into DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that also was a central path of your father's crusade. I'll call it a crusade for economic justice. The number of African Americans, Black people who were elevated in the corporate world, entrepreneurs and so forth, that your father helped. And of course, these individuals got to advance in corporate America, build their own companies as a result of diversity, equity, inclusion. Talk about that in the context of one of the cardinal, perhaps cardinal dimensions of your father's crusade for economic justice and why that is so important today.
Well, it's a carry on, this unbroken history from Reverend Martin Luther King and his work here. When my father was on the balcony with Reverend Martin Luther King before Reverend King was assassinated at the Lorraine Motel, and they went on to speak in Memphis. They were there fighting for the custodians and the sanitation, the garbage workers. They didn't have a contract. The workers had gotten killed, getting out of the rain, crushed in the back of a garbage truck. And it was about workers' rights, a push for the unions. And my father took that challenge on. Reverend Martin Luther King was fighting to open up private sector that I think people too narrowly defined it as boycotts, but as seeking reciprocal trade agreements. How can we be the consumers and yet we cannot be any of the suppliers? How can you ride on the bus but not have access to opportunities to be the bus driver or be the maintenance person or be the private vendor to sell fuel or the private vendor to sell tires or the private vendor to build out the uh, transfer stations and other things, the shelters. So the push for economic reciprocity, seek for inclusion. That's how you get to breaking up the systemic roots of the poverty. Um, Many of our people are poor not because of lack of work, they're poor because of lack of assets. They've not been able to be in a structure where they can accumulate assets. People work every day, but they aren't able to accumulate assets. That's my definition of poverty. So there are people that are working that cannot make enough. The DEI was simply the challenge to corporate America to show them what's in their own best interest. We really had white baseball and colored and black baseball. You didn't have Major League Baseball until everybody could get on the field. And so you can't say that the majors were majors and anybody that played without all of the competition being available was truly the greatest of their time. So it's hugely significant that they integrated the Negro League Baseball statistics into the what was called the Major League Baseball statistics. You couldn't be major if you couldn't play against everyone. And so we're saying to corporate America, open up in the year 2050. It's in your best interest. A quarter of the world's population in 2050, in less than 24 years from now, one quarter of the world's population will be of African descent. One third of the workforce will be of African descent. In business, you look at demographics are also your destiny. I mean, there are population cliffs in Asia and China and Japan and in India. The explosive growth of the fastest growing economies and countries on earth are in Africa now. Why are we putting up trade restrictions and sanctions? I mean, we need to be talking about reciprocal trade agreements, and many people on the continent are trying to reach out. And right here in corporate America, if you have corporations, and I want to highlight Costco, which is a fantastic corporation, and
Right.
the president attacked them on DEI. They're like, no, we're going to stand by our values. We do believe having our board and our vendors reflect the population that we serve is good business. We do believe in helping small businesses build up their inventory and build up their businesses and help development in their community. We do believe in inclusivity, access to women gaining access to boards and women having access to entrepreneurship. We do care about women's maternal health issues. And why is this so illogical? Is so irrational
Right.
on the other side. So it's good for business. And the facts are in. Corporations that have diversity, equity, and inclusion policy are more profitable. And now the president is going back really to almost a segregationist mentality and saying, no, you can't work with uh, your core consumer base. It's illogical.
But you know, it's also I found it very interesting, Congressman, and that is the fact that some companies decided to roll over with the anti-DEI propaganda, but companies like Costco, I have a Costco membership. I shop at Costco. I like what they do, but companies like Costco were able to stood their ground, which really takes the carpet underneath some of these companies who perhaps are saying, well, we have to go with the status quo. They don't have to go with the status quo because they can do like Costco. They have enough money to be in litigation for years to come to defend what they would consider a principle in their workforce expansion.
Well, some of the corporations have shown that they were never committed to it, wouldn't stand by it, wouldn't fight for it.
Right.
And so I look forward to the marketplace rewarding those persons that have aligned themselves with the interests of their consumers.
Yeah, yeah. And Congressman Jonathan Jackson is a former professor of economics, by the way, so he knows what he's talking about. But why do you think there's this the misnomer that diversity, equity, and inclusion is simply about making people who are not qualified get over? I mean, it's you still see that propaganda out there.
You know, that's in the soil, meaning that it echoes from history. It's something that's so baked in, it's really pathological in
Right.
our culture that it was called affirmative action. And then they said people were not qualified to participate. Well, some people that were cynical about creating dates, times, and goals for African Americans to have inclusivity, put some people up that might not have been best qualified. But for those that had the spirit of what offsetting negative action with affirmative action truly meant, you know, ended up doing extremely well. When you think that my grandfather, my father's father, came back from World War II and was denied the GI benefits, there was a generation, some people have called them the greatest generation. I would argue that. I think the greatest generation is right here, right now, and gaining much steam. But blacks and people that were drafted in the war that had to postpone getting married, had to postpone having children, postpone buying a house, and all these other things. After they came back, the GI Bill was put in place to help accelerate those soldiers, to reward them, to thank them so they could get on with their life. And then systematically, African Americans were excluded. African American veterans were excluded by law by the United States government. So that was a negative action. The Kennedy administration ended up crafting an executive order for affirmative action to offset the negative action. So affirmative action was in reaction to having been excluded. I mean, that's where people have to simply understand. And to this very day, we still have exclusionary practices that have been baked in. So if you don't challenge it, the inertia stays with the negativity. So you have to have, in the words of Newton, an external
Every
force to act
action, there's an
upon.
opposite and equal reaction.
Right, unless you
Isaac
have
Newton,
an,
right?
an external force to act upon
Right.
something that's moving in a downward trajectory, it's going to continue to fall. So we have to assert ourselves and say, no, we have a right to be consumers, right? We have a right to now play basketball. We should also have a right to own stadiums, also have a right to be commentators, also have a right to own teams. Like we want a piece of the whole pie for things that we generate value in.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. I want to talk about just you've taken this issue of DEI to Congress, the caucus here. Talk about the importance of that. Congress obviously makes laws. Why did you feel the need to take it to Congress? And is there a momentum around it in Congress?
Well, why would we do it? Is the president, in a very carefully and cajoling way, has weaponized these three letters. He has taken on the anger that some people have felt that should have been their entitlement to exclude and look past people. This bad issue of blood of racism and discrimination doesn't naturally come out. You've got to work it out and retrain people to have a better mentality. And so this is the same people that had this fight in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. Where did the children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren of those people that you see screaming in Arkansas and having demonstrations protesting black children going to school in Massachusetts, where do you think those children and great grandchildren went? They're still around. Just like my parents and yours have had to fight these fights. Well, some of them still believe that they were right. So why do we take it to the Congress? Because the president has, in a very Machiavellian and a very cynical way, has redefined what DEI means. People can't really put a definition on it. So with the power of the bully pulpit, he's made a definition. And his definition is it's bureaucratic, it's wasteful, it's illegal, it's discriminatory against white men. And if you have any issues, put it all on this three-letter meaning, and you can transpose it. And if you're not doing well, it's because of that. So he's doing the blame shifting. The original sin in the Bible is blame shifting. It's not taking responsibility. So there's a huge amount of political capital by shifting blame on someone. And that's what he's done. We have to affirm ourselves, say what's right. You don't need to change the name. Now we know it means anti-black. 400,000 women, black women at government jobs, have been the demographic that was hurt the hardest by this loss. On average, African Americans that work in public sector government jobs makes more than blacks that work in private sector because of the history of discrimination. On average, most people make more money in private sector than they do in public sector. It's inverted for the black community. And so he's wholesale just eliminated a generation of very competent people in government. And then he's put this fear campaign on corporations, on law firms. If I see you doing something pro bono for a black firm or institution or company, we'll strip you from doing business with the government. Then he went to universities. You better not have any programs for math, science, technology, engineering, or sciences or arts for African Americans to come on campuses in the summertime. If you have programs for any African American or any women, that's what he's labeling as DEI. And women are caught up in the middle of this. So women's health, look at the reproductive health issues in black infant mortality. It's just god awful. Look at white women's life expectancy. It's going down because he won't even let you discuss women. I was in South Carolina the other week, and Nancy Mace is the first female to graduate from the Citadel. She graduated in 1999. Here's an institution that's almost 300 years old. You think we've had too much diversity and equity and inclusive programs for women? And then let's just be like practical. Do
Mhm.
women deserve special considerations for some things in business? Absolutely. Okay. Look at childbearing. It takes a man, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, or 1 minute to do his part in producing a child. A woman has to carry the baby for 9 months, and then she has to feed the child. Should there be special accommodations in office buildings for women to to feed their babies? Should there be a special amount of time for women to care for the children? Should they be compensated when they are uh, having to no longer be at work during this time period of raising their child in the critical months after birth? Yes, yes, yes. And so we need to like discuss this. Look at contraceptive uses that men can use whatever agents they have, and that's covered by medical insurance. And women on reproductive care and birth control is not on some of these issues. So yeah, so we need to have the conversation, not weaponize it. And why would the Secretary of Defense say you have to take down the lessons of the Tuskegee Airmen and the accomplishments of Jackie Robinson? Like, why would he erase Benjamin O. Davis, the first black pilot in the United States services, uh, to take his honor down? So no, we can't stand for that. You cannot erase history and be an honest person.
Yeah, no, and you talk about Tuskegee Airmen, Congressman. I remember when Red Tails came out. In fact, I moderated the first community event here in Detroit at the Charles Wright Museum of African American History. Red Tails was, of course, as you know very well, the resurrection of the greatness of the Tuskegee Airmen, of which former Detroit mayor, legendary mayor Coleman Young was a member of, and of course several of our elders as well. So do you have on the DEI caucus in Congress, do you have members from both sides across the aisle, or is it only Democrats? How is the membership of the caucus designed?
Well, thank you. It's only Democrats. Republicans are certainly
Right,
welcome. I
right.
think there's a fear factor amongst the Republican caucus,
Which is why I asked the question.
participate.
Right,
Exactly. And so they know better. They know what's right. But the Trump administration has frozen them, paralyzed, and given them a sense of fear and paralysis. But this is not within the Black caucus. This is for the Democratic body as a whole. There
right,
is a DEI caucus from the Black caucus, but the Black caucus membership is limited to African Americans. I
right.
support that 1,000%. This is in addition to that caucus. So that way, I've got Representative Ro Khanna of California. His district is Silicon Valley, that has the
Which is important. And your father's gone to Silicon Valley to prick their conscience many times.
and he's brought resources from the Bay Area and Silicon Valley to historically Black colleges, 8 in South Carolina, giving them internships and jobs to tap into their minds. It's also had Congressman Sri Thanadar from Detroit. It has Mark Pocan out of Wisconsin, and Madeline Dean out of Pennsylvania, Tim Kennedy out of New York State, host of African Americans. I want to show you that there are Mr. Lloyd Doggett and Congresswoman Debbie Dingell is a great member. But I want to show you that there's a breadth of people that do have courage. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell deserves a special thank you for her leadership in it. She's never wavered on it, signed up on day one, and has been a champion, saying that Blacks have a right to contracts, women have a right to services, that we need to keep the doors of opportunity open. She's been very forceful in her advocacy.
Right. No, no, it's interesting you mentioned that because I'm curious now, Congressman, because as we head into, I know we're going to talk about the midterms shortly, but as we head into 2028, the presidential election, I take it that the DEI caucus that you're leading in Congress, which has such crossover appeal here, is going to play an important role in 2028 because I think, Black folk, people of color, women, and others would want to know in terms of the presidential contenders, are you all in on DEI or are you 20% in? Are you 100% in or are you 5% in? Talk about that.
Well, the question becomes, I don't like to, curse the dark. I'd rather put on my light. I like to go forward. I don't look to fix the blame. I try to fix the problem. Like
Right.
I wake up thinking of opportunities every day. How do you improve the conditions in the African American community? How do you improve the conditions of the working poor in this country if you do not embrace these values? Give me the other alternative. Give me the solution. I have not found one. And we've never had a society based upon purely of meritocracy. Many people have been excluded. We've never taken the opportunity to create the bridges and the ramps and the roads for inclusivity. So no, we can't stop taking our medicine too soon. We've got to finish this. And the people that are against the DEI The main reason they're against it is because it's been so successful.
Yeah, yeah.
They're against it because it's working. It was closing gaps.
Right.
It was healing old breaches. So we've got to open that back up. And it's a huge body of work that many great corporations have done. A lot of studies have gone in to show the values of it. But we can't be afraid. You have to be able to look the president in the eye, man and man, and say, you're wrong, Mr. President. No, that's not correct. And there's too many people that are cowards that capitulate. Just weak knees is what they say, huh?
Yeah. Well, when your father ran for president, of course, the opportunities he opened up for black folk within the Democratic Party itself. I mean, that was DEI, our folk to be able to accelerate black women like the Donna Brazils of the world and their elevation. They were competent, but would never have elevated. The late Alexis Harmon, former Labor Secretary, none of those individuals would have elevated despite their qualifications, but for your father running to open that. That was DEI.
And you can start with Geraldine Ferraro.
That's right.
When she was put on the ticket with Walter Mondale, it was an issue that my father had brought up. So women's sports being fully funded. All of this is the same part. Even AIDS research goes into DEI. I mean, these things have been cut back. Like, oh, well, that's a special issue. Every disease is a special issue. I mean, like, what are you talking about? So it's so nonsensical, it's illogic, and it's a very malicious and evil spirit. And in the end, it's malignant. It's not going to grow. If it's alive, it has to grow. So where is the growth? They are selling fear and they're pandering to the lowest instincts of people.
So what is your message, Congressman, to the presidential contenders in 2028 who are going to be running on the Democratic end? Because they will expect the support of the black vote. They will expect support of people of color, women, and so forth. And given the significance of DEI and the space that it occupies in the advancement of black folk, people of color, women, and so forth, what's your message to any presidential contender on this issue?
Well, looking at the depth of poverty, looking at the persistent issues of race and racism, I would ask them, what are your solutions? How do you see a path forward? What programs have you embraced? What's the best method by which you've seen success in the past? What would you want to implement in the future? And there's enough history. And the last thing that shows you best practices and key success factors. And the thing I would conclude with is, show me a plan that you're willing to implement now, that you've already stood by, that you've studied, that you've researched, that can help our community now. And the last thing I would tell them is, the one thing I will not settle for is the black community does not need another research paper. We're the most researched people on planet Earth. So don't research us again.
Yes,
don't come back and tell me that you're going to study the issue. Tell me what is the plan now going forward. No more research, no more studies on African Americans. It's a lack of opportunity. Show us how we get in the doors of opportunity so that we can achieve our goals.
No, I agree with you, Congressman. We've had many anthropologists who continue to study us, issue white paper, make money off white paper.
Sociologists, anthropologists, cardiologists, nephrologists.
And we don't study other folk. They only continue to study us, and diagnose the same issues. No, I totally agree with you.
No more studies on us.
That's right.
We need the money.
That's right. Show me the money. That's right. Coming from a former economics professor, Congressman Jonathan Jackson. But let me pivot quickly to the midterms here. How crucial it is for Democrats to take over, and in a post-midterm Congress, when Democrats take over, what are you looking for the Congress to do?
I'm looking for the people to come out, and you have to overwhelm the polls. We're seeing all the check engine lights come on for our country. This Secure, this Save America Act that can ask people to show up with their passports to vote, ask people to show up with their birth certificates, will exclude so many people from the voter rolls. The Republicans are fearful that if they can't get their vote out, you have to suppress your opponent's vote, and that's what they're trying to do now. This does not make our elections more secure. Since 1982, in their own investigation, the Heritage Act, where Americans cumulatively have voted over 5 billion times. There have only been fewer than 1,000 instances of some voter manipulation and fewer than 68, I believe, of foreigners, undocumented persons, even having ever attempted. So it's less than a percent of a percent of a percent, you know. And then they're going to like do something that can throw up to 20 million people, jeopardize up to 20 million people on the voter rolls because they're primarily women, they're primarily voting Democrat. So they know the science. The people in power that are trying to maintain it against the will of the people and not grow the democracy. Once they are running for office, they want the people to vote for them. Once they're in office and they're losing, they create schemes where they get to pick the voters that they want. So they flip the script. Now they're trying to pick the voters and exclude people. So the midterms are crucial. We've got to over-index because there's going to be a lot of potential manipulation. As I left Washington, D.C. this morning, and I see National Guards people still on the ground in Washington, D.C., we've already got federal troops deployed on our streets. Not enough conversations about that. They're like normalizing this. They're rationalizing this. I mean, can we see those persons redeployed at the election season in about the next 230 days, 240 days? We should be concerned about that. We have to take this over. And what does it mean for the Congress on going forward? It means everything. Are we going to open up TSA and pay government workers and stop these shutdowns? Are we going to put more money into food programs that were cut or continue to fund a war that nobody voted on in the Congress? Are we going to help family farmers open back up their markets in soybeans and wheat and corn? Are we going to continue to spend this $1 billion a day? I mean, which way are we going? The contrast could not be clearer. You know, right now, what he's saying is America first means America alone, which is going to translate into America being left behind. So we've got to get this process. And the Congress, it's a co-equal branch of government. It can stop him. So there are tools in place. But Speaker Johnson, from his behavior, you wouldn't know it.
No doubt, Congressman. As a national congressman here, I'm curious about your about Detroit, how Detroit fits into your national lens, because that aside, Detroit was an important footprint for your father. He spent a lot of time here in Detroit, and I'm thinking now as the midterms is coming in 2026 and the 2028 presidential election. Are you looking to do a tour of urban communities like Detroit, like other national congressmen and women of the past have done?
Oh, absolutely. I've been up there before with
Right.
Congresswoman, now Senator Slotskin. I've been up there with Congressman Conyers over all the years. Thank you and all your friends and great people. Detroit is ground zero. You know, it should be solidly a democratic state. What's with the swing? I mean, the automobile industry benefited greatly from President Obama's policies. It benefited greatly from President Biden's policy. President Trump has hurt them. Like, where's the swing? Like, we've got to go talk to our friends and brothers across the state and say, don't you see he's making the nation less competitive? That a livable wage, a working wage, is an honorable thing to do. Has President Trump made Michigan better? No. And so I think Michigan is it. With the work we've done, the automobile industry, think of it, when they got bailed out because they had a temporary problem, like anybody can, President Obama put in a place where they were given the financial assistance at a rate that they could afford, that the private markets would not subsidize, would not grant. They were told they had to repay every dime. They did. It was liquidity freeze. Now they've become healthy again, and they're growing. Um, Electrification is is the future. Everybody knows the planet is getting warmer. President Trump pulling all the plugs on electricity. They're saying we're going back to gas, and now look at the price of gas shooting up through. Look at the price of diesel. Well, there was billions and hundreds of billions of infrastructure that was being set up, invested in for the electrification of transportation. I mean, he's a disaster. We should have high-speed rail connecting Detroit and Chicago, and Milwaukee, and Chicago and St. Louis. Like we're still moving along at a horse and buggy pace, you know, in a jet set in a digital world. So no, Detroit, Michigan, you've got the brilliance, the genius, you got the culture, you got the connectivity. We've got to put Michigan squarely, solely into the Democratic column. Think about what happened. The president is saying in his voter suppression language, he's saying, look at where it's happened, voter suppression, and look at where the illegals have voted. And what does he say? He says it's in Atlanta, it's in Philadelphia, it's in Pittsburgh, it's in Detroit, it's in Milwaukee. Now let's decipher that. What is he really saying? He's saying all the elections were fair in Georgia, except for where black folks were voting. All the elections were fair in Pennsylvania, except for where black folks were in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. All the other races for Congress and the Senate were fair in Michigan, except for in Detroit, where black folks were voting. Michigan, Wisconsin is fine, but only in Milwaukee. This is dog whistles. He's telling the base to get ginned up and make sure you have voter suppression in our neighborhoods.
Yeah. How did you feel? You hosted the national prayer breakfast at the Washington National Cathedral where the president was speaking. What was it like to be in his space, or for him to be in your space, either or?
I felt great. You know, I felt as if all of my experiences had led me to this point. Many Democrats don't go to the prayer breakfast. It meets every Thursday. It's a small group. There are a lot of great things to do. And some guys told me, Jonathan, we missed you. Some Republicans, we wanted you to come back. I went back. The Democratic that was outgoing, he tells me, Jonathan, we would like for you to be the co-chair of the National Prayer Breakfast. And I'm like, oh man, what an honor. I don't know about leadership around here. What I'm supposed to do. I tell my father, he says, that's a great thing. And I said, well, what are my responsibilities? I asked the other outgoing congressman. He said, you bring a Democrat 1 week, share their story of faith, and they bring a Republican. Right now, I'm about 2 out of 57 people that I've asked and that have accepted. The most of them will not come. So it doesn't make you popular. I can tell you that. You become very unpopular in the Democratic Party. But I believe the Democrats have to lead in faith, that we can't concede this. People are looking at the Democratic Party as being immoral, you know, and looking at the Democratic Party as being about poverty. We're not telling our whole story. So I don't have a problem discussing my faith. It's nothing I debate and argue. I can certainly share it with you. So when I went to see the president and gave my prayer for the nation and for the president, the Bible tells us not to pray for your friends and your wealth and your well-being, but it says even pray for your enemies. Like, let's take the whole faith. And so I asked the good Lord to be with the president, all of his deliberations. You know, Lord, increase his courage and his capacity for wisdom. Okay, for thy name's sake. Okay. So I was very respectful, but I didn't hold back any punches. And love him or not, leave him or keep him, he is the most powerful man in the world. And if he takes that Damascus road and he comes unto himself, the same person that's dismantling the Department of Education can turn it back on. The same person that closed USAID, the same person that's extracting government officials out of their countries and destroying their sovereignty and asking for the United States government to give them more money, is the same person that can put an end to these wars. So I pray that he comes unto himself, you know, and has a revelation and says, right, like the Christmas story, I'm going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, like the war in Iran that we have going on, and he's asking for Congress for $200 billion for you all to write a check for that. Congressman, I want to just as we round this up, go back to your eulogy at your father's funeral. You came up with the phrase, rise, Jesse, rise. Talk about what went into that for you. Given that 3 years ago, your father asked you to give his eulogy, and I know that was a solemn responsibility for you, and it was very emotional for you. But talk about rise, Jesse, rise, because you got everybody in that church on their feet. when you went down that path of, what I would call rhetorical dexterity?
Well, it was just to play off the term when he was doing voter registration and got drafted into running for president. There's a generation or two that wouldn't know there was a draft, and people would say, "Run, Jesse, run." My
Yeah.
father was looking for somebody who had been in office and might have been more acceptable by the parties and by constituents to be the nominee. Nobody was willing to take it, and then the term "Run, Jesse, run" kept coming. So he took on the challenge of running for office. And in conclusion, I you know I remember my friend Cleo Fields, who's the co-chair of the DI caucus. He came up with Martin. Rosa sat down so Martin could march, so Jesse could run, so Obama could win. That wasn't Jay-Z. That was Congressman Cleo Fields that came up with that. And so fly, win, and
Right.
then in the scriptural tradition, we look to have our wings. Now it's time to rise.
Right.
That weeping may endure for a night, but joy,
Right.
like, let's rise and
Right.
give people a sense of hope. There were so many people nationwide, worldwide, that had a sense of solace and sadness. I wanted people to have a smile on their face. My father was very joyous, and time to rise up. And my father told me, he says, Bankole, one time I came in the house crying, and he says, after he found out, he was very dismissive of me crying. He said, listen, I was disappointed, so he knew disappointment was always going to happen. He says, tears and sweat are both salty. One may get you sympathy, but the other will get you result. So get back to work. And my tears just dried up. Now it's time to have a plan. You got to get back to work and get back in there.
No question. Well said, well put. Thank you so much, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, for being here.
I'm coming your way, Bankole. We've got work to do in Michigan. Michigan is ground zero. Invite me out. And if you don't, I'm still coming. I know where you are. I'm knocking on your door. You can't get away from me. Okay.
No doubt. We're looking forward to it. I think it's important for Detroit to be part of your national platform. And the issues here. Your father has always talked about Detroit being ground zero of the national urban crisis. Detroit and Chicago as almost like twin cities. They're so similar on issues and so forth. And I think that there's an opportunity here for you to elevate those issues to the national stage.
I look forward, and I appreciate your work. You've got a fan base here in Illinois too, Bankole. So keep doing what you're doing, brother.
All right, thank you, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, or brother Congressman Jonathan Jackson.
See you, man.
All right.